Good evening. I do my very best to make sure this show is as objective as possible. We have guests from all opinions, but I'm never afraid to give my view. Tonight's first debate, I will admit, I have a very heavy vested interest in, and that is the mayoral contests that would duly go ahead. There was going to be a mayoral contest in Suffolk and Norfolk combined, in Greater Essex, in Sussex and Brighton, or Sussexes and Brighton, and in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. And Reform did announce their candidates just 2 days ago, and we fancied our chances in all of them. But this is what unfolded this morning, starting in the House of Commons at 10:30 this morning with Fran Buller, who is the local government minister.
Parliament is minded to hold the inaugural mayoral elections for Sussex and Brighton, Hampshire and the Solent, Norfolk and Suffolk and Greater Essex in May 2028, so that these areas have the opportunity to conclude their local government reorganisation, to build strong, effective unitaries, which is what we want to see, and to establish their strategic authority before their mayor takes post.
Well, there we are. And that decision was backed up by Josh McAllister, a junior education minister, later on in the morning.
We're reorganising local government and strategic authorities as a country because everything's too centralised. That needs to be done with care and it needs to be done methodically. That's all we're talking about here. People are still going to be going to the polls in May next year. They're going to be going to the polls in May the next year. We have local elections in this country all the time. That is not changing.
And the Prime Minister, on a visit to Lossiemouth today, gave us his take on why these elections, and bear in mind that 7 county council elections last year were postponed for a year. This was the PM's take on why this will be postponed for 2 years, not 1.
There are various arrangements being put in place to ensure all the elections could take place at the right time, depending on the configurations of the council and other arrangements.
How fortunate we are to have a Prime Minister with such charisma. Now, look, I am not happy about this at all. I think it's outrageous. I think it's monstrous. And as I was told by a very senior figure of an Essex council this morning, we are ready for these elections. We have prepared for these elections. And across the county and Greater Essex, we've already spent many millions of pounds. So let me ask you, why do you think they're doing it? Tweet #Farage on GB News or email farage@gbnews.com.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C-18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private Internet Access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
It's been a funny old week, Lord John Cryer, hasn't it? Former chairman of the Parliamentary Labour Party. I mean, it does seem, we have had an attack on, well, as I see it, jury trials. This morning we wake up to newspapers telling us there'll be surveillance cameras even in small English villages. And elections again being postponed because, frankly, they fear the result?
It's never a dull moment, is it, really?
Well, that's true. I will grant you that.
I'll come to the elections in a minute. On the jury trials, I mean, personally, I haven't got a problem with that because we've got a backlog of 80,000. Only 3% of criminal cases ever go to in front of a jury anyway. I mean, it's not ideal, but we've got to have some way of tackling that backlog because people are waiting years. Witnesses are dropping out and trials are failing to go ahead for that reason. Very often victims are dropping out. On the surveillance cameras, I think we're going to come to that later. But
we will in more detail, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not happy about that. That doesn't sound like a good move. On the mayoral elections, the question is there going to be democratic representation? Yes, there is, because elections within those areas are going to go ahead. So your local council, say if you're in Essex or Sussex or in the other two, you'll be able to vote for your local councillors in the existing council, but there will then be a strategic authority, which will be a kind of, it's what we used to call a shadow authority.
Yeah.
When the Greater London Council was created, a shadow authority was created, I think, 2 years before and ran so it could get well established. I haven't got a problem with that. I think that seems perfectly reasonable to me. And in examples where elections have been rushed, and we have got examples of that in the early 70s, there was the biggest reorganisation of local government ever.
73.
Under Ted Heath, yeah. And I remember it because I grew up in Keighley, and Keighley became part of Bradford, which was very controversial at the time. Actually, it still is to some extent. Those elections were rushed through, and you had very high levels of voter dissatisfaction. There were complaints about the process. There were endless debates in Parliament about it. Now, I think that if you're going to try and go through a methodical, rational process and get to the result that we all want, I don't mean what you were just talking about, I mean a democratic result that we all want, then it's better to take your time. Well, I would point out also that Cheshire and Cumbria have already asked for a delay because they felt as though they couldn't get arrangements in place.
Here's the odd thing, though. These counties will now be asked to vote in local elections in 2026, 2027 and 2028. And I just think the voters are going to get very weary and very confused. So my argument is, have a mayor in place, if that's what we have to do, have a mayor in place to explain to people what the process is. That's my feeling. Alistair, I mean, you know, and I mention jury trials, and yes, we will, as John rightly says, do surveillance cameras in more detail. But there's just something about this government that wants to control, and I feel just take away decisions from us.
Yes, I mean, look, all the signals, all the mood music is deeply authoritarian, I'm afraid. And I'm quite worried about that. Without exaggerating things, I'm very worried about it. I think the attack on trial by jury is a terrible mistake, right? This is a huge change. It's at the heart of British political culture to have trial by jury. We've exported that all over the world. In a sense,
it's Magna Carta under attack.
Yes, it's Magna Carta under attack, exactly. We've exported that way of doing things all over the world. Countries all over the world think that we pioneered a form of justice that works. And we're just throwing it all away just because we've got a backlog or, you know, maybe we're not spending enough money on one of the state's core functions. I'm all in favour of massively reducing the size of the state, cutting public spending, but we need to spend enough on the core night watchman functions of the state, and law and order is a core state function, and it needs to be done properly. We cannot sacrifice real justice just to save a few pennies, given that we're wasting so much money on everything else. So I'm deeply worried about that. I don't like the fact that it wasn't in the manifesto. We had an election 17 months ago. These sorts of major decisions should have been in the manifesto. We're being sprung this major change. I'm really completely opposed to it. When you look at the same time at what's going on with the mayors, you're seeing a government that doesn't know what it's doing in terms of democratic accountability, right? First of all, I'm not even in favour of creating all these local mayors. No. I'm not in favour of constantly reshaping local government.
No, I get that.
There are clearly problems with local government, and perhaps we need some changes. But what I see is year after year after year of constant changes, semi-devolution.
And endless elections.
Endless elections, a creation of endless new structures. People don't really understand these structures. A lot of local identity keeps getting messed around. So I'm not really in favour of all of this. But if you're going to have mayors, then you should have the election when you say you're going to have the election, and I can't see why it needs to take two whole years to delay all of this.
That's my point. Back on juries, because it really, I think this is all linked in terms of the government's attitude towards these things. You're right. We are 80,000 cases behind. I was in court recently. Chap across the channel wanted to kill me, and there I was in Southwark Magistrates. And I was there with the cops. And the trial was due to start at a certain time. Oh, they said, well, he might be late, because Serco often deliver late. And the time I was supposed to start was delayed by an hour and another hour. Yeah. And I thought, actually, a bit more efficiency in the Crown Courts. But here's an idea. For the minor cases, why don't we, and it will cost money, but why don't we reopen the Magistrates' Court, put a big pitch out to all the retired lay magistracy, and in a sense they're a jury because there are three of them that make a decision. I think that, John, to me, would be a better way of doing this.
I'd love to see Magistrates' Courts reopen. I mean, there was always where I grew up. I've lived in London since I was 18, but where I grew up, there was always a Magistrates' Court. It was always there in the centre of Keighley. That got closed down under the 2010-2015 coalition government. George Osborne strangled the money going to the criminal justice system. And I think, if you remember Alex Chalk, who was the Justice Secretary.
Yeah.
I heard Alex Chalk on Today a few days ago, and he said, the criminal justice system has never been a particular priority for governments of all stripes. And I think there's something in that. I'm hoping that this government will reverse that. But you can't, unless this is like a smaller state, you can't reduce the state and expect it to fulfil the functions like of an effective criminal justice system. And I can't be, with all the courts that are closed, and I don't see a magic wand appearing and them all getting reopened and all the lay magistrates coming out all the time.
No, but I'm just trying to make a positive...
Yeah, no, I can see the point you're making. I mean, one thing I would add to that, there was a period in the 2010s, something like that, where there was a bit of a move to full-time magistrates, stipendiary magistrates, instead of lay magistrates. I think there was a lot to be said for that, because I know defence lawyers who would tell you that they were getting people, serious criminals, bail, who should never have walked out of the court because they were able to run rings round very enthusiastic and decent magistrates.
John Cryer makes the point very well that actually you can't avoid spending money on this.
Yes.
And spending money on this and making sure elections go ahead are all part of us, almost of a social contract.
Yes.
Of us having confidence.
Yes, but these are core functions of the state. I'm happy to spend more money on this. Right?
Okay.
That is the whole point.
Fine.
I want to spend more money on the courts. And I think you could extend opening hours, for example. You might have weekend sessions. There's all sorts of things like that you could do. I think it's a scandal that justice is delayed for so many people, that, these backlogs are a real scandal. The previous government didn't sort them out. I'm not happy with the way this government wants to sort them out. I don't think you should sacrifice...
But it does matter.
I think it matters greatly.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's deeply unfair that people have to wait years, to go to court.